So to developers, schema is the first thing you start with. And I think it should, whenever you're working on business automations, is because it gives you that working vocabulary and understanding.
Welcome back to another episode of The Pursuit of Purpose. My name is Chris Kiefer, and I am here with the one and only Workflow Joe Martinez. Joe, thank you so much for coming on and talking about one of my favorite topics, which is automation. I'm excited for this.
Yeah, Chris, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. Um, this is my first ever podcast interview, so I might be a little jittery, but I'm excited about this topic, and I can definitely talk a lot about it. So I'm excited to hear some of the questions.
I will warn you, this is a technical conversation. So if you are not someone that loves the nitty gritty details like I do of how you structure the data inside your business, you might not enjoy this episode. But if you are someone that loves the technical details, how do I structure the data in my business and the schema in my business, this episode is for you. So without further ado, let's get into the conversation with Joe Martinez. I came across Joe through, we always occasionally I will reach out to some subcontractors to assist with thinking about things in a different way or solving specific projects. But Joseph, we stumbled across or cross paths because he is an Airtable expert as well as extremely proficient in Zapier as well. So I'm a big fan of Airtable for home service companies and painting companies in particular to use for project management. And the thing that I think a good place to start would be, you said on one early call with me was that you like to joke that there is an objectively correct schema for every project or problem that you're solving in business or in Airtable or whatever tool you're using. Uh, Tell me about, like, break that down for me. Or first of all, for those that don't even know what schema is, describe what that is and why that's so critical to get right.
Yeah. So schema is software development like 101. It's essentially the data that you're going to be building software around. And as a software developer, when you're working on projects as a team, you have to have an agreed upon vocabulary and a back end structure that everybody can work on and communicate clearly about. And that is what we call schema. And I find that a lot of business people who aren't necessarily software gurus don't really ever think about schema. They obviously they call things words, and they know that at the end of the day there is data that they have, but they haven't really taken the time to define what their schema is, what business objects they work in, and how those business objects relate to one another with the classic one-to-one or one-to-many relationship. So the first phase of my process with my clients is defining our schema, which is what I say there's an objectively correct solution to. This is not like a soft science. It's any software developer in any programming language from any part of the world is probably going to end up with the same schema if you approach it like a math problem looking to be solved. Like there is a correct solution to your schema, and that if people were to Google technology database schema, they would see images of these charts, typically consisting of 3 to maybe 20 tables, depending on how complex the software you're trying to build is. That is the skeleton of any software project. So to developers, schema is the first thing you start with. And I think it should, whenever you're working on business automations, it should be the first thing you start with because it gives you that working vocabulary and understanding.
And it immediately puts, not only for yourself, because obviously, even if you were the only one working on this would be valuable, but it's extremely valuable for the team to communicate and discuss the same thing. Make sure that we're talking and talking about the same thing, correct?
Yeah, yeah. The hard part, the bandwidth, like how much information you can get across in a couple sentences, is really important as a consultant and as a developer, because you're kind of speaking about sometimes like esoteric and in like broad terms, about iterating through things, and like there's this complex software that's not very easy to talk about sometimes. But when you have the correct schema and you know when to use plural nouns and verbs and adjectives, like they kind of get it. It help facilitates clear, concise communication.
So I want to take this specifically to painting companies. Um, Talk to me about like what would be the questions that a painting company should be asking themselves when it comes to, okay, I want to use Zapier and automate business processes, or I want to use Airtable to structure my project management. What are the things for someone listening? Because we have a lot of home service companies that listen to this. What should they be thinking about when it comes to, okay, I want to set this up for myself, or maybe I'm working with a consultant currently that's doing this for me. How do I know that we're on the right path?
I think if you're working with a consultant, I think a good consultant will be able to answer the question, "What is my schema?" I know in Airtable, there's an extension or a super simple plugin that just shows you visually what your schema in Airtable currently looks like. I wish I would have printed out one to show. Uh, so when it comes to a painting company, the kind of some of the golden rules for thinking about your schemas are lists of nouns. Like they're a plural noun. A table is essentially, it's many things that are the same. So for example, for a painting company, you would obviously have a table of your clients. You would have a table of probably the houses, or I guess the commercial buildings or houses, the addresses that you painted at. You would have a table probably of the visits that you have gone, and then you would have, a visit would relate to a property and to a client, and then a visit would probably have the application, or something that relates to what product was applied, whether it was paint on this wall or whatever, some description. And then that visit would probably relate to some line item that ends up on an invoice or to some work, object. Again, we would have to get into the weeds about it, but the, 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 the schema is like once you discuss it for like an hour or two, it ends up like you just kind of sit there on Airtable and you can put together tables, and then you're left with the network that is the business.
So we can have something to talk about. I was just going to say,
Yeah.
because this is for someone that hasn't seen what you're talking about. This is specifically the whoops. This is it. And now a quick word from our sponsor, which is Boolean Review. Boolean is a review software that my wife and I own, and we sell this software to home service businesses. So I know there are many different people that listen to this podcast, but if you know someone, an electrician, an HVAC business, a painting company, maybe a coffee stand, someone that is providing service to customers and get found online by customers, we would love to talk to them. This is a review software that is the highest converting review software in the home service space in particular. And if you're wondering what that means, if you have 100 clients in your business, the typical business gets between 1% to 2% of those customers. So for every 100, they would get one person or two people to leave them a review on Google. Other review softwares get between 3 and 5%, and the Boolean review software gets 20% of your customers to leave you Google reviews. And these are fantastic Google reviews with lots of words, keywords that are going to help with SEO, pictures, stories, the names of your employees. So if you want to learn more, check out booleanreview.com. And now back to the episode. Just a random one that I grabbed.
Yeah, so that looks complex. If you could actually go to the settings icon on the top right and flip off all the ones except for the top one. Yeah, flip off all of them except for the top one. Yeah, this is going to make it look a little simpler. But this just shows how the main object, which is going to be that left one, which it looks like you call projects,
right?
How a project connects to each customer and to invoices and how, yeah. So,
and then I guess so this is like, this is the schema mapped out, right? Of my project crew leader is linked to my worker table right here, right? So we know that, and then there's AWOs which go to the AWO table, whatever. So that stuff is there. My thought is, when someone is like, obviously, if you were smart and you're a painting company, I would say, here are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 objects that are probably going to serve you well in the painting business, right?
For
Um,
sure. Yep.
and those are objects of like. I've always thought like, how do I explain this to somebody that doesn't get it? So I'm going to give you my answer, and you tell me if there's other analogies or things that you can think of. But to me, objects are like things. They are a record of something in the business that is distinctly unique or different than another thing in your business. Like projects have names, and there's crew leaders, and there's a customer, and there's a job number, and
Yeah.
a whole bunch of other stuff. But that's obviously different than a company table, which is who you're working with, and those are associated with people that are the customers. Or invoices clearly are not projects, but invoices are a part of projects or related to projects.
On a
So
one to many basis or on a
yeah,
one to one basis.
yeah,
Yep.
exactly. So
Yep.
what how else would you like for someone to think, how many objects do I need? Where do you draw the line of like, this is a property with like a multi-select
Yeah.
versus it should be its own object that's its own table with other properties?
Yeah, it's going to be down to one or the one to many thing. So, for example, if I'm looking at projects and somebody's asking, well, why do I need a table of companies when every single time I have a project, it's with a company? So you would think that a company would just be an aspect or property of my project. To my answer would be, well, what if that company changes their website domain? Then you would essentially need to look up all the projects and go and edit each project's company's website domain name, which is a bunch of properties where if you just had a relational database, you would just have the one company object who's doing an edit, and therefore every other linked project that you had with that company, you wouldn't, it's through the relationship, through the one to many relationship, meaning one one company can have many projects. The one property of the company affects the many project, the many properties of the projects, if you want to know the project's company's website.
And then tell me if building on that, it would be like, let's say you start out with, I have my projects, and one of the properties is a company, and I also have a website, and it just so happens that that website is always tied to the company, and I also have a billing address, which is also the company address, right? And so when you start out realizing how many of the properties in a given table are all tied to one of the properties, that probably is an indication that you could simplify this by saying, oh, all of these change based on the company. Why don't we have a separate table for the company, right?
In fact, with working with Kylie over on your team, one of the things we were actually talking about in our last meeting was we had a table of projects, and we were talking about a table of events, which effectively site visits or things that need to happen. And one of the things we noticed was the address of the event is always the address of the project's location. So we kind of knew, okay, so the address, the event itself doesn't have an address. The event is tied to a project, and the project is tied to a property, and the property is the thing that has the address. So the address of the event is a derived property by looking back through the relationships, looking at the project and looking at the property. Uh,
I love
but
that.
to what you just said about how when you start noticing that properties on a particular table are copies of other properties that might be related. Like I don't know. It's hard to. I can see how if you're new to it, it can seem confusing. But once you kind of get what's going on and you've like maybe looked at examples, like it's really just it's programming 101, like to kind of know when it needs a new table or when it doesn't. And the thing I say is it's plural nouns. Like it's very rare that a noun that you talk about when there's plurality to it, it wouldn't deserve its own table. Um,
Like
Adjectives,
projects,
yeah, that's a noun.
customers,
Yep.
companies. Yep.
Invoices, like all those are nouns. Uh, a more complex use case might be. I honestly, I wouldn't be worth like if anybody would want to talk to me about like if they think theirs is complex, I'd be happy to talk to them about that. Like there's maybe sometimes where a verb or like an action could be a table, but it would be like it would ultimately be just depending on how you use that word in a sentence, whether it was a verb or a noun.
Or noun.
I think, yeah, but it's mostly just
uh,
nouns are your tables. I think.
yeah, I like that. Um, what are the most common pitfalls or misconceptions that you feel like, oh, every time I get on a call, 80% of the time, this is misunderstood or this is a pain point for companies or business owners?
Yeah. I so when I started doing this about 8 years ago, I wouldn't, maybe even for the first 2 or 3 years, I wouldn't, schema wasn't really something that like was front of mind for me. And I would ask people like, let me see how what you're working, like let me see what you're working in, and they would pull up softwares and screen share and show me inside of the CRM HubSpot or their Airtable or the Pipe Drive or whatever they're using, and we would basically come to the fact that, oh, this fits perfectly, and then they would ultimately come to an area of the business that didn't like fit in their choice of software. And through the years, I've realized that all that I as a consultant really need to know for the first hour or two is what is the schema, which is known by what is the schema, which is like whenever I'm looking at people, telling me about their stuff, like that's what I
Listening for,
am listening
filtering
for.
it.
Yeah. So only with time do I realize that's like what it is called and that's what I need to listen for. So now that's like the first question I ask, which is the answer to, to not to beat the dead horse here, but it is literally people don't know their schema as well. And all of my clients, most, the people that I've worked with for, 15 hours, 16 hours, we start every meeting with, okay, like for example, I just got out of a meeting with my fuel delivery service, and we were discussing properties of an invoice, and they have many different ways they generate invoices. And this client I've been working with for about a year and a half, and it's so easy for us to talk about because she was able to say, oh, yeah, when we make an invoice, the property of the fuel type being Opus affects the invoice line items variance in that it's hidden or not hidden. And then the collected tax on that should be shown or not shown based on the additives being either this or that. And those are all additives is a table, collected taxes is a table, variance is a property of the delivery. Like it was just really easy for us to communicate. So my clients, okay, so I kind of talked about two things. One is how clearly it is to talk to customers that understand their schema. And then two is we start the call like another meeting I had earlier where, hey, hey, Dennis, let's start today. Okay, so we're housing group fund, distressed loans. You guys have a table of loans that you ultimately come from manifests that you gather. Your asset managers deal with these loans and ultimately build out loan modifications where you'll generate documents based on document templates that get sent via an interaction to your borrowers, and sometimes call in entities. So we just said in a sentence, his 7 tables that he works in, and that's kind of how we get our brain juices flowing to now discuss what feature we're going to focus on there. So schema. The pitfall is if you can't say that sentence and say what your business is in just 25 seconds, you're probably missing something and can nail something tighter.
And yeah, because I think that that's a fundamental, like someone, I'm just trying to think of all the reasons that someone like, oh, we have our schema figured out. We've got projects and customers and companies and invoices or whatever. But that's important to identify what are the objects. But then the next level is, which is still part of schema, is intelligently deciding the restrictions and or requirements of how the objects need to relate to one another. And yes, there's one to many, but then there's also like, I want my projects to relate to my worker table, but this property can only be my crew leaders in the worker table, right? And just like being very intentional about the associations that you are defining. And that also, like, yes, if you don't have it totally figured out in the beginning, you will get it figured out. But the more that you have this defined at the beginning stages, the easier it is to tell a developer or someone that's building this stuff out for you or your own team to exactly. I love what you just said of the example of a customer that understands it to be able to tell you that this property of my invoices is affecting this other thing, and they can tell you with very specifics like what's going on. Because I think a lot of times when people lose faith in automation or systems, it's because the system that is not in their minds functioning the way it should. It's usually the system is functioning exactly the way it's been told to function. You just haven't identified this variable or this edge case, and now we need to account for that and make the system more robust to handle that in addition to everything else it's already handling.
Yeah, yeah. The joke is that automated systems are like literally hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of characters in a perfect order to to do. Like there can't be any typos, there can't be any miss and or statements. It has to be a perfect order, uh, and the 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 bones of that are the schema. That's how a business entrepreneur and communicates with their developers and how they communicate with their operations people. It all comes down to the the it'd be like trying to be a doctor and not one doctor calls your quadricep and one guy calls it your top leg muscle. Like they got to agree on something, and it's the names. Yeah, the names have got to be agreed upon.
What are some like I don't know if there's another topic that you're interested in, but I guess one thing I am always curious about is what are the processes that you have helped or seen automated that have most surprised you?
Yeah, this is a fun question. I think. Uh, so I've been doing this a while, and I've helped. Like, it's not like I specialize in a particular industry. I've seen a lot of companies and the way they operate, and that's one of the things that whenever I talk to friends or family about the work I do, they say is interesting that I get to touch and see so many different industries. So that question to me sounds like what are some of my favorite projects, like past projects or current projects. Um, so the I would say one of the most fun ones. Um, I mentioned the fuel delivery service. That's essentially us taking serialized truck pump output data and keeping track of all the taxes, payroll, invoicing, collections data from that. But they were a client that I got maybe in my second year of doing this, and I've been with them I maybe do at this point just like 2 to 4 hours a month just of maintenance and sometimes producing data. But that project was fun because we just scrape just a CSV that comes out of a old school like 1990s computer out of like a truck pump, and that industry doesn't have like high technology touching it yet. So we've been able to leverage Zapier and Airtable to 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 where they just like come to work in the morning. The woman imports the tickets, the system populates. She's able to check all the collections for taxes and deliveries and trucks and all this stuff. And within maybe an hour, she's produced and emailed out invoices for like 115 to 200 deliveries over 3 different states. Something that used to take them every day, all day to do, even sometimes falling behind and coming on weekends, that now just is something that's so brutally obvious because we've systematized it and everybody knows what's going on and what's missing. Um, Another fun client of mine is um, the oh my gosh, there's so many, but one of my biggest clients ever is a consulting firm that took executives, usually people like 50s and over that have been in an executive position that want to just make a change. So they'll pay this company to teach them to kind of bring them up to speed on Google Suite, Microsoft Suite tools, HubSpot. They just kind of trains them up on modern software tools, and then puts them in touch with their network, and uh, a bunch of surveys and all this stuff. So they come to me with like this crazy company that's built on spreadsheets and consultants, emailing files back and forth to one another. And we're able to basically identify, okay, Airtable's going to be the source of truth. We're going to plug in Asana on top, which is where your consultants collaborate with all of their consultees, I guess, or clients. And then Google Suite is going to be where all the documents that get generated and most of the forms that we use live. And that company is, I think, like 24 consultants. I mean, thousands of consultees, clients, all over the world. And they've gone from what felt like a headache and a mess to just this beautifully automated, once the sale is made and payments taken, to collaborating with tasks mutually in Asana. Anybody who works kind of in the administrative section is able to go into the Airtable database and look up any data they'd want about any survey or questionnaire or meeting, and pull up recorded links and look at charts of performance metrics and look at placements. And it is a complex business that, like, they were stressed out about it at the beginning, but then after, maybe 3 months of working on it with them, we got their schema settled. And they have a lot. I mean, I think they've got like 27, 30 tables or something crazy in Airtable. Like, you have to like scroll along the top to kind of see all the things. So
That's crazy. And obviously, they're not working in the back end of Airtable. They're working through the interfaces of Airtable or a different tool.
they actually work in the back end. So interfaces on Airtable is a relatively new thing. I was actually one of the beta interface testers with Airtable. Uh, so as much as I love interfaces, I came up in the era before Airtable interfaces, where you did just only work in the back end of Airtable. So this company actually doesn't use any interfaces. They operate all on views and the back end that they've made. And then, of course, a lot of them operate in Asana, which links to some views in Airtable sometimes. Uh, um,
I didn't know you could connect Asana and Airtable.
so we just do it based on task and project and section IDs. You can be in Asana and you can.
Is it a two-directional sync?
It's not really a sync in so much as it's like, hey, if I'm in Asana, if I'm in a project in Asana and I'm looking at a particular task that might talk about a particular survey answer, the survey's answer is stored in Airtable, which I know is table, JK72, and the answer to the survey might be record, 9782. So I can use a formula to make a URL that they can click that brings them to the Airtable record that is that answer. Uh, so it's kind of this soft integration.
Ah, okay. So it's not linked, or it is a you're linking. You have a URL that's pulling it up, and you've automated generating that based on what's correct.
That URL is automatically made, yeah, to allow simple connections and clicking in between them. Uh, yeah, and then I can have one more to give us the three examples. So another awesome one that I actually was in a competition for. I didn't win, unfortunately, but it was a inventory tool that I had to make. Uh, a tea leaf company of mine, and actually I've sold this interface to anybody with inventory problems out there. If you got things that make things that make things that make things, like, and so on, then we have a beautiful Airtable base that me and a guy named Mateen spent, I don't know, we spent like 50 hours like working together coming up with the perfect schema. But basically it's like, I get shipped leaves, just leaves, and like boxes and bags, and I need to take those leaves and I need to put them into tins, and I take those tins and I put those into boxes, and I take those boxes and I put them into gift baskets, and I take those tins and put them into massive pallets that I ship to other places. So it's like he makes things that ultimately can also make things, and even those things make things. So it's kind of this weird problem that most inventory, if not, I don't think any inventory solution really has, that like things that make things that make things. So
And keeping in mind how many things is needed of this to make the next thing.
yeah, like if you get an order for a gift basket, then you need to go look at the variety pack of tins as well as the 6-pack of black tea. And if you're out of the variety pack of tins, then you need to make more of those, which means you need to pull more black tea. So it's like this watered down inventory problem. And we have a beautiful, I could still recite the schema by heart. It's essentially, you get shipments. You have product offerings that have variants. So that's three tables: shipments, offerings, variants. You then have customers who place
What do you mean variants?
variants would be like a product offering might be a like a tea six pack, like a six pack of tins, and you would have multiple variants of that. That would be like, well, one's black tea, one's green tea, one's red tea. So
So is it kind of like a package name?
it's like it's like online whenever customers are filtering for products, the product offering might be a filter that they would apply on the Shopify site, for example.
And that's the variant.
And the variant is the most granular object, which is like the thing that they would ultimately be putting in their shopping cart. They'd be putting a variant of an offering, which is how in fact that's a relationship that we got from Shopify. And looking at his Shopify site, we realized, hey, on your back end, they have these things called product offerings, which you can't buy, but it's how you filter some stuff, and then you're ultimately buying a variant. So the inventory solution is shipments, product offerings, variants, customers placing orders that produce needs that, that are fulfillments, which I think is like 7 tables. But those
And needs is a table.
a table of needs.
So the order comes in and it's like we need these things still in order to satisfy that.
Yeah, an order comes in. In order, a need is essentially a line item of an order. Like an order might be for 6 tins, and
Oh, because an order could be a bunch of stuff, and then you need like, oh, we're missing one thing for this item. We don't want to say the whole order is not, well, the whole order might not be fulfilled, but we need specifics. What is the thing that we're held up on?
so the system is really smart, and it actually uses interfaces. That was the competition. I took what him and I had made, and we worked together to kind of make an even more badass interface once that feature was added. So his system, he can basically it's a live system. Like he went from having the back warehouse build things, and then at the end of the day entering it in like what happened in the warehouse, to having in what I call reactionary system, to having a predictive system to where he can come into the warehouse and look at the orders that were placed that night or yesterday, and then the system tells him, hey, go grab this much of this lot to produce this or to package this. And it's an awesome base. And I like the tea guys I have used that. I have some maple syrup people that use it. I've got a snow cone company that uses it. I made up a company called Table Enable that uses it, but I think only a couple. But it's a fun base to work on and to go back to.
Yeah. What else is, we've got like maybe 3 or 4 minutes left. What else is a hot topic, something you're interested in, you like talking about?
I got two things. A quick one would be obviously a buzzword a lot of people talk about right now is AI. And one vision I have is, I'll say this. So an amazing thing that we're going to have in the future is the ability to just pass order data, shipment data to an AI, and then we just ask it questions as we would like a really smart human. Like, hey man, how's my sales looking? And the AI would say, oh, you've made this many sales today, and here's how much product you've used, and you'd say, okay, well, how much of that do I have left? And then the AI would be able to tell you how much you have left. And so I imagine a future where an AI, because right now AI models, you just ask them a question of a certain length that is, it's pretty short in the grand scheme of things, and then it produces an output. But at the day where we can ask a question, then that AI can look at our data schema and produce an answer and come back to us with an answer. Is going to be an amazing day when an AI has access to our company's data, and it doesn't have to be included in the prompt, I guess, right now.
And you're saying that it is necessary for the schema and base and everything to be built out well, but AI could access that. It's not like, or just to clarify, you're not saying that you wouldn't need Airtable because of AI. You're like,
Correct.
AI would be literally reading everything in the Airtable
Yeah.
and being like, ask anything about the business, and it's going to know all the stuff.
Yeah, I think with sufficiently advanced AI, maybe even the tables themselves is kind of hidden in the black box of what the AI is doing. But certainly a stopgap in what we're going to see, hopefully in the next, say, 5 years, is going to be an AI, like an Airtable, where an AI is built on top of it, to where you can just ask it questions like you would, because any business owner should be able to ask their database any question and get an answer. And whether that's with Airtable now by producing views and filtering your data and sorting it and grouping it, but hopefully one day an AI is able to look through your schema and find out those answers for you. Um, and then another thing in my personal life that I love a lot is video games. I've been playing them since I was a kid and love thinking about game engines and how gamers game and compete with each other and how to get better at stuff. So
That's awesome. Let's dive into book recommendations. So, what are your 3 book recommendations for us?
yeah, okay. So I'm a sci-fi book nerd. I think one of the ones that still I remember, which is hard to remember books, I think sometimes if you really think about it, but it's Ring World. And I don't even remember the author, but it's probably the only book ever called Ring World. And it's a pretty quick. It's probably about 130 pages, and it's about some travelers who come across one of the space megastructures that is a ring built around a sun. So imagine if the path the Earth traces around the sun, if that was like actually just a giant structure, and humans that were explorers in space came across one that had been used in the ancient time, like way a long time ago by some alien race. And it's about explorers exploring this ring world, which is pretty incredible. Uh, yeah. And then I guess another one would be I. So I got lucky and I read Dune, at least the 6 OGs before the movies even came out.
There's 6 books.
Yeah, yeah, there are.
I just watched parts or the first Dune and the second Dune within the last 3 weeks. Which books are those movies based on?
They're based on the first.
The very first book.
Yeah,
And there's 5 other ones.
yeah. The I'd say the last 3 are kind of like if you're just into the lore and stuff, you should read. But the first 3 I think are worth the read. So Dune, and then the other one is a book called um, golly, what's it called? Um, oh my gosh, the people out there, there's something called the Ends of Invention, and it's um, oh my gosh, I might have to Google something. I can't remember it. It's my when I game my gamer tag that I play with is based on this book, and it's on the tip of my tongue. Unfortunately, I can't remember it. I'm so sorry, I can't.
No worries. Let's jump to the movie. What's your favorite movie?
I'm a Star Wars fan, so I think the third Star Wars, The Revenge of the Sith, is my favorite to watch. Like I just find myself that's the only movie that I can just watch over and over again. I don't know what it is about it, um, but I love that movie. And then I love um, probably like as a kid, the Disney movie called oh man, I'm bad at names.
What's it about?
It's about the family that gets stranded on an island.
Oh, yeah, oh, Swiss Family Robinson.
Yes, exactly. Yes, yeah,
We just took our kids to Disney World, and I had forgotten about the treehouse and stuff, and they have it there, obviously. So we watched that with them.
yeah. I was in Disney World literally 3 days ago with my family.
Yeah, um, great. It's like I hadn't seen it in such a long time. A little cheesy as an adult, but man, the kids loved it, and I loved it when I was a kid. But it had been, it's one of those that I hadn't seen in such a long time. That when I went back to it, it's like, oh, I remember it being like, I don't even know. Uh, it was like I was watching Dune, but the 8-year-old version of Dune was Swiss Family Robinson.
Yeah, and I remember the book. It's called Consider Flavis is the name of a crazy sci-fi book. So if you ever get the time to read Consider Flavis, like it'll blow your mind. It's about a like essentially like a type 2 civilization where humans are all over the galaxy, and there's like massive traveling planet-sized spaceships and just just like almost like Hitchhiker's Guide, but a little more hard science and some crazy concepts and cultures and all this stuff. It's like it's part of the culture series. Who's the author? I don't remember, of course, but
So, what is the preferred method of contact for people to reach out to you if they want to chat more?
yeah, just my email. So my email is joe@workflowjoe.com. Workflow Joe. The website I had up, but it's getting redone at the moment. So I technically, if you go to my website, it's just going to say like domain out of action right now. But that's Joe, Joe, at Workflow Joe, just like it sounds.
I was going to tell you, you need to, this is my email for the longest time was like this. And my business coach told me to do this finally. And I was like, oh, duh. I think this should be your website or something like this. Like, this is literally my, I have honestly, a different website now, but it's just like, hey, this is what I do and email me. So when I was looking, based on what you told me, it's like, this is literally like, it's an intriguing website, I think. And I don't know how far you are in the website development process, but we also have like our actual Hello Boolean one, which took longer. Yeah. There's more to it, but my email for the longest time was Sky Media because that's been my business for the last 10 years, but it's evolved so much. And I used to work with oral surgeons, interestingly enough. And I was like, the oral surgeon website makes no sense now that I'm working in painting. So I was like, what do? I don't have time to make a website. I don't even need a website really because I've got enough clients. And my business consultant was like, just make a paragraph and put your photo on it.
Yeah, so, mine is like it looks like a screenshot of an iMessage thread. That is like somebody who says, "Oh, I need help," and I say, "Oh, I do this. Well, what can you do for me?" And
I love
that's what I'm going with. Yeah, but I appreciate you having me on here, Chris. I'll say if you can't answer what your schema is, then you should find a consultant or me to help you discover that, to where you can confidently sit down at your desk and say, all right, what table am I working in today? Or what's the thing we're going to make better? What tables are we going to improve on?
Awesome. Well, it was fun. And I know we'll be seeing each other again, but I appreciate you coming on today to chat about schema and base structure and automation and all that stuff.
Yep. Thanks for having me, Chris. This was fun. I'll see you around.
Thank you so much for listening. My name is Chris Kiefer, and my mission is to champion the relentless pursuit of purpose. And what that means to me is to be an example, a champion, someone that is in the trenches, working and showing and winning and trying and failing in how to pursue a deeper and more meaningful life with the people that I love, with my kids, with my friends, with our family, and also just be a champion and example of entrepreneurship and following my passion and doing what I believe I'm called to on this earth. And so if that inspires you in some way, please share this episode. If you want, like, subscribe, share, whatever, do all the stuff. It means the world to me to get this message and get these guests that I have out there. And if you're interested in any of the book recommendations or looking up other episodes, the movie list, you can visit my website, chriskiefer.com, for all the details on the show. And also check out the Boolean review software, as well as the Boolean automation consulting company that I own for home service businesses. So thank you so much, and we'll see you on the next episode.